Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Rangers Review Morning Briefing. It is Monday, the 9th of September. I'm Derek Clark, and I'm joined this morning by Chris Jack. How's it going, Chris?
Not too bad, not bad yourself. A weekend without Rangers, so Rangers didn't ruin a weekend, which is always nice of them.
Yep, I slept soundly in my bed on Saturday and Sunday, given that, like you say, Chris, we never had the Rangers to go out there and destroy our weekend. But, yep, good weekend all round. Back up in Glasgow for Saturday. I had a 40th lovely little party in Queen's Park, so that was good. Back down the road yesterday. I actually watched the Scotland game. I don't normally watch Nations League matches, but I watched the game against Portugal last night. Good goal by Scott McTominay, and then it was just Steve Clark-esque tactics, wasn't it? Just soak up and try and defend what they had. I think that Portugal, deserved the victory in the end. Did you watch it yourself, Chris?
I did. I watched bits of both games over the last couple of days, and like you say, you almost got the feeling that's how both were going to go. Even the other night there, when they get back into it, never overly confident that they would go on and see it out. And last night, you just had that feeling that the goal was going to come some way, somehow. Perhaps not surprisingly, it was Ronaldo that popped up with it. But when you give yourself that chance and you also get ahead, you then think, well, there might be something on here. But I say, going into that last 10 minutes, I always had the feeling that Portugal would get there in the end. So we've got plenty of issues to talk about Rangers-wise, but I think there's definitely issues Scotland-wise as well. Not in a good place, not in a good run of form right now.
Yep. Comment here, so I thought Billy Gilmore was class. Yep, he did well last night, Billy. I'm looking forward to seeing both he and Scott McTominay at Napoli in that midfield. Great moves for both of those. And very much good luck to the pair of them in Italy. Right, let's crack on with all things Rangers, because they may not have been playing over the weekend, but there is plenty to talk about. Spoke to Dave King, Chris. I've seen a lot of reaction on social media. He's been speaking about the abuse directed at Rangers skipper James Tavernier. Has also been speaking about Chairman John Bennett, as well as the current malaise at Ibrox at this moment in time. So I'll read you what he had to say, folks. He says, it's incredibly disappointed to hear that a small minority of supporters are letting their anger temporarily overcome them to the point of directing personal abuse at our players. We're all immensely disappointed at the performance of our team and its decline since Title 55. That, however, is not the fault of the present team or the individual players who are approached to play for the club, not the other way around, and who are mostly doing their best. We all judge player performance. That is part of being an emotional supporter. We wish slower players to be faster. We wish less creative players to be more creative, etc. Ultimately, it's the balancing of many factors that create a successful team. He goes on to say that is why player recruitment should assess multiple aspects, inter alia, the player's technical ability, temperament, character, very important at Rangers, leadership and team compatibility. Different skill sets are required to ensure a balance in any successful team. Any player signed by Rangers must assume that he passed that standard and therefore must perform in accordance with his abilities and the manager's instructions for any given game. Individual players cannot be held accountable if the combined result of recruitment and team preparation results in poor performance. Rangers supporters are loyal supporters, turning on our captain, who has been 100% loyal to Rangers, and memories are short, repeatedly saved us in key games for a decade, is the opposite of loyalty, and I hope that most supporters will join me in condemning such behaviour. Supporter anger should not be directed at our team. In the end, our club finds itself in a largely self-inflicted decline by turning on our own players. It's not the Rangers' way. I know John Bennett is devastated by current events and is working immensely hard behind the scenes. We have a challenging period ahead and need to pull together to get through it. What do you make of that, Chris?
I think there's quite a lot to unpack, and a lot of different strands and threads to that statement there. I thought the backing of James Tavernier is not a surprise. You would expect Dave to have that stance. I know it's something we spoke about last week. It's something myself and Stevie spoke about on our Talking Point show last week. That video and that show got a lot of reaction. And I think, as we expected, a lot of contrasting views. You're either, there almost doesn't seem to be a middle ground in terms of Tavernier. You're either for him or against him. You either back him or you want him out the club. You either want him in the team or you don't. And I think that's just the nature of the support. Certainly after an Old Firm defeat, it's going to be raw. It's going to be emotional. So I don't think it's a surprise that video that myself and Stevie had last week has got that reaction. But I don't think it's a surprise at all that Dave has taken that stance. So clearly thinking of the good that Tav has done for Rangers, and again a point that we've touched on, that abuse that Tav has taken during a game situation. You're going to expect shouts to come from the stands. You're going to expect boos. You're going to expect heckles. That's part of the game. It's a different thing when he's out in the street, or just after the Old Firm walking back to his car. That's a different situation. So I think Dave was right to call that out. On the other wider points, and I spoke about the self-inflicted nature of Rangers' decline. It's hard to disagree with him at all on that. Again, something that we've spoken about over the last wee while. It's not been a productive few seasons for Rangers, since Dave mentioned since 55. It's not gone well because money has not been spent properly, appointments have not been made properly, players have not performed to the required standards, and that's why Rangers find themselves in this decline, and that's why so much of the conversation over the last week or so after that Old Firm game, even before that, heading into this season, a lot of the conversation has been how did Rangers find themselves in this situation and how do they get themselves back out of it. Again, I don't think it's a surprise that Dave has thrown his weight, if you like, behind John Bennett. Interestingly, he says, I know John is devastated by current events and is working immensely hard behind the scenes. I don't think the fans would ever doubt that. I hope they'd fully expect that. But again, John is someone who has come in for a lot of criticism from the Rangers fans. And I say he finds himself, like the manager, like so many of these players, very much under the spotlight. But I say I think it's good of Dave to come out and give him that public backing, because whether John feels that he needs it or he wants it, to have someone like Dave King in your camp, I don't think is a bad thing at all.
Yep. Some interesting points just coming off the back of that. Over the weekend, you've seen, on Friday, it was being reported that a number of clubs whose transfer deadlines don't shut until I think the Turkish one is the 13th of September. I may be mistaken with that, but teams in Turkey and the Middle East are still keen on James Tavernier, and he could still potentially leave in the near future. Would that be a surprise for you, Chris, to see him depart at this point? Or do you think it might be best for both parties if he is to move?
I think now it would be a surprise in terms of the timing, because I don't think it would be ideal from a Rangers point of view. We don't expect them to then go back into the market to strengthen that right back position. We spoke with Stevie the other day about the free transfers that are available, and I think the consensus amongst us is if they were going to do that, they would have done it by now. So that doesn't look like it's going to happen in terms of midfield. I'd be surprised if they go and try and replace the captain with a free transfer a fortnight after the window has shut. I think one of the points that came out of the video that I did with Stevie last week is the number of people who feel now is the time for Tav to move on. He should have been sold in the summer. That when the manager spoke about this end of the cycle, that had to include the captain as well. That obviously, for whatever reason, didn't happen. And I think having now come through the transfer window with James not having moved on, I think it becomes difficult for Rangers, even in just terms of a body's point of view. People want Dujon Sterling as right back. To me, Sterling's not shown that he's anywhere near robust enough to play the number of games that would be required. If you're going to say Tav should be dropped from the team and rested and given a period out, that's then a different conversation. That's then a different question for the manager. He can be dropped, can be rested. Dujon can come in and play games, and Tav is then the right back or right back up. I know I feel like Casemiro's name was come up there again. We just don't know how good he is. We don't know how reliable he is. We don't know how robust he is. Can you sell your captain right now and then put in a guy who we've not even seen kick a ball and say, by the way, go and replace James Tavernier in this side? So for me, it doesn't make any sense right now. I don't think it'd be the right moment. If it was going to happen, it had to happen earlier in the window, so they could then go out and properly replace him. You can't have your captain being replaced by a stopgap signing.
The comment came in there. I think Rangers do have available options should Tavernier either move on or be dropped. My opinion is his form's nowhere near good enough at this moment in time. For me, I would be thinking about dropping him for Tannadice, which would be a big call, it's fair to say, but that is why the manager is paid the big bucks and not me. This is an interesting one, just deviating slightly, but David Morrison with the point. I know you... Stevie, you discussed it on the show, Chris. He says, do you think Tav should have been put in the Hall of Fame at this time? In hindsight, I think maybe a bit premature. I've got to say, I know Stephen Davis was put in at the time, but I don't think he played. He was out injured, of course, wasn't he? And then he just called time on his career. I don't think it was the right time for a current player. I don't think a current player playing at Rangers should be inducted into the Hall of Fame whilst they're still at Ibrox. Your opinion on that one?
Again, it was something that I touched on with Stevie last week, and again, we both agreed that our bar for Hall of Fame, our bar for that legends phrase is so overused in football in general. At Rangers, it should be the peak of players in terms of talent and conducting themselves as you expect a Ranger to. In terms of their silverware successes. Now, Tav's silverware successes, you can say he's not been part of sides that should have won titles. He has been part of sides that should have won more titles. I just think it was. I can understand why the club did it, but like you, I think it was too early. If he had gone on from 55 and delivered another couple, if Seville had gone differently, I think that's a different conversation. But there didn't seem a need to do it at that time. And as DJ says there, I think it's that bar of legend at Rangers should be so high that Tav right now just doesn't meet it. And from the years or months, whatever he's got left in his Rangers career, I don't think he could ever actually meet it. But you look at some other names there and you see where that bar actually is. That's maybe why the club felt it was appropriate. But for me, that it should be the ultimate in Rangers players that gets into that Hall of Fame, and they should have their name on that board.
Yeah, I agree. This is an interesting one. I never knew this. RFC Forever says Davy Robertson isn't even in the Hall of Fame. If anyone at Rangers is watching this, get him inducted right now. Favourite Rangers left back of all time, Davy Robertson for me. I know there'll be folks screaming at their laptops and phones saying Arthur Newman or even, going way back, you can see John Gregg and what have you. But in my lifetime, Davy Robertson was the best. Yours, Chris, if you had to pick a left back in your lifetime? I know Sasa Papac is well loved amongst the fan base, but who's yours, would you say?
I think if you're going from my lifetime, it's those are the three options. I would plump for Davy Robertson, but the others that you mentioned there, Newman, very, very classy and brilliant left back, and played in some games, gave the fans some great memories. Sasa, just a model of consistency, professionalism, just really, really, really good. But no, I think you look at what Davy Robertson brought to that side during that era. I've always found him a great guy to deal with as well. So I would certainly have no qualms with him being in there.
Yeah, Kev, always a comedian, says a harsh on Olivier Bernard. That was quite something. Part of the first Rangers team to progress to the knockout stages of the Champions League, right enough. So can't take that away from him.
In terms of achievements, away from man.
Yeah. And Aldo with a cracking suggestion. Stuart Monroe, yeah, absolutely. And a great guy as well. And, for those of you, incidentally, that are extra members, I spoke to him, I met him when Orsa last year and had a quick chat with him outside the big gala dinner. So you can go and watch that on the Extra channel, folks. But yeah, cracking guy, and he was a top drawer player as well. Right, let's move on. Let's stop trying to. Well, all those players would walk into the Rangers first team at this moment in time. Yes, so let's move on swiftly. Interesting stuff over the weekend as well. One player who we very much doubt we'll see in a Rangers jersey again, Chris, but Yanis Hagi has released another statement, and he's defended himself amid his Rangers XL. He took to Instagram and he wrote, "With all due respect to the media, please stop quoting Giovanni Bacali in his comments as that of my agent or mine. He's not my agent. I've been under contract with one football agency at Talent for more than 4 years, and they're the only people that represent and talk on my behalf." So this must have been speculation. This is speculation, of course, of Hagi moving on from Ibrox. It was thought he had rejected several transfer options back in Romania, but he's come out and released another Instagram statement. We've discussed Hagi at great length on videos, Chris. Manager doesn't rate him. He's just going to just bide his time in the reserves, I'd imagine, until January, and then Rangers, I'd imagine, will hope to move him on again.
So many words, so many minutes played, unfortunately. Like you say there, Derek, I don't think we'll see him in a Rangers jersey. Certainly not a first team Rangers jersey. You may see him playing for the B team between now and the next transfer window, but he's not going to feature for football and financial reasons. It's time ultimately for Yanis just to get his head down to work through whatever training schedule he's going to be able to work through. I'm assuming that'll be training himself rather than with the Rangers first team squad. So he'll just need to go through that schedule. Whatever B team games he is eligible to play in or wishes to play in, I'd hope the club do the right thing by him and give him that platform, as long as it's not completely at the expense of a younger player looking to make the breakthrough. Rangers have to prioritise their next number 10 if there's someone coming through the ranks that they feel benefits or would benefit from game time more than Yanis Hagi, then that player has to get the chance. But I hope they do right by him, give him the chance to keep himself fit, keep himself sharp, and ultimately in three and a half months' time, transfer window opens, we get to go through all of that all over again, and hopefully Yanis is one that gets to move on, because I think, as we spoke a number of times about over the window, and certainly since, he does have something to offer the game. He doesn't have anything to offer Rangers right now. I think the manager has made that situation clear. Surprised that he didn't move on. Surprised that there wasn't more interest in him to allow him that chance to move on. But I think the fear or the danger for the manager, if you like, if things don't go well in the next couple of weeks, and that number 10 position becomes an even bigger talking point, we know this momentum is going to build off. Give Hagi a game. Why is he not getting a chance? The manager's made a mess of this. The club have made a mess of this. Why is he not playing? Ultimately, both parties have set out their stall. The manager has made his call on it. He then has to live or die by that decision. And Yanis, having not moved on, he must have known there was this danger of, if he doesn't move before the transfer deadline, there is a danger he doesn't kick a ball at first team level for another 3-4 months. So I think everyone should know by now where they stand. Ultimately, they just have to live with those decisions over the next couple of months.
Yeah, there's a few comments saying it's a bit of a mess. There's no doubt about it. It doesn't benefit the player or the club either. And it doesn't sit well with me that Rangers stumping up his wages and he's not being used. We know about the wage increase. Should he play another game? But for me, you're not telling me that the Rangers, the options that are available to Clement are far and away better than Yanis Hagi. I'm very excited, incidentally, about seeing Nadim Bajrami in action. I know he played over on the left for Albania in their Nations League match against Ukraine over the weekend. But excited about seeing him in a Rangers jersey. Let's go back. There's lots of suggestions about best favourite left backs during your time watching Rangers, and this highlights this sort of age of folk that watch that tune into the show. Love this. Stephen says, nobody mentions Jimmy Phillips. Yeah, he was there during Souness's time, wasn't he? He's actually a legend down at Bolton Wanderers. I have tried to get in touch with him to get him for a big interview on the Rangers Review, so hopefully we can get him at some point. Stephen says Alex Miller as well, RS40, Willie Matheson, a few suggestions as well, William Burns, and as Jim McKerrell echoes as well, Eric Caldo shows my age, but yeah, he was absolutely cracking as well, very deserving of his place in the Rangers Hall of Fame. Another defender that we have spoken to, you spoke to him, Chris, he's still on the books at Rangers, he's on loan at Exeter City. I doubt he'll come back to Ibrox to continue his career in Govan, but John Lee Yefeko, he joined Exeter on a season-long loan. I think they have an option to buy, I think, or he will join them at the end of that loan. I'm not entirely sure.
They do have an option on him.
Yeah. Impressed me. They won at Bolton a couple of weeks ago. They won 2-0, and I thought he was very good at the back, defensively sound, and big, strong lad. You spoke to him about his time at Ibrox. He got fits and starts, mostly in friendlies more than anything else, Chris, but never quite worked for him at Ibrox. What can people expect when they read that interview? I
think they get a really interesting insight into the player and the person. He spoke a lot about his early stage of his career. He was released by Spurs and then Leicester. It was also after leaving Leicester that Rangers managed to pick him up, but he had an injury just around about that time after leaving Leicester on his knee, which he had to self-diagnose in effect, and had to try and find his own way to rehab that injury. And he speaks about going from that academy system and being sheltered, being pampered, if you like. You have everything, certainly at a club the size of Leicester, you have everything there laid on for you. You're then released, and access to gyms and physios and sports science, all the rest of it is then taken away from you. So he had to go through that period of self-rehab and self-assessment to get himself back. Got the chance to come up to Rangers and sign a short-term contract that was then ultimately given further contracts as proof of the club's belief in him. But he has had other injury setbacks during his time here as well. So it's not been the easiest couple of years for him, but he admitted that at the end of last season, he sat down with his camp and he knew that he had to play regular first-team football somewhere, and going through the games programme was not going to be enough for him this year. He had to go and play regular first-team football. He had a number of options down in England, chose Exeter, spoke to the manager down there, Gary Caldwell, ironically, and really bought into what he's looking to do this season. So he feels that this is the right place for him. So far, it's going well for him. Really pleased to see him going down there and playing football. Whether that results in him coming back to Rangers, or whether it results in him signing on at Exeter long term or getting another move, that's the only time we'll tell. We're very early on in the season, but I thought it was a really interesting insight into the journey that young players make. Now we see players coming in. He made his debut in that Morton game at the start of last season under Michael Beale. And young players, when they're pitched in, you don't really know their backstory or how they've got to that point in their career. So hopefully it gives people a bit of insight into how he got to that stage and some of the difficulties that he's had to overcome in those months since. And also interestingly, I asked him about the manager's comments regarding the B team and the setup in Scotland. Clement spoke about that. Was a fortnight ago, 3 weeks or so ago. He spoke quite a lot about that in terms of the processes that young players go through and the platform that they're given. And he didn't use that as an excuse. Now, he didn't say we don't have a reserve team, that limited my chances, I'm not as good as I could have been because of that. He's basically said I played in the games, I trained when I could, and ultimately I wasn't at that level yet to make that step into Rangers first team. I thought that's quite a refreshing and honest opinion, because players, as we know, I can always look for excuses. It can always be someone else's fault, but he was open enough to admit at that stage in his career he just wasn't quite ready to go from academy player to Rangers first team defender. Now that's no slight on him, because that is a big jump. It's a big hurdle to try and cross, and hopefully this season, playing more regular first team football, hopefully that will allow him to, as I say, if it doesn't make him a Rangers defender, it should help him go on and hopefully progress in his career over the next few seasons.
Yep, it's a good level for him, good club down there, so I can see him doing well at Exeter. So yeah, good luck to John Lee Yefeko. Some interesting little snippets as well. You may have seen just two players. This tickled me, I've got to say. One player that left in the summer. A few comments about it. John Lundstrom, of course, at Trabzonspor. He received some bizarre criticism from the club's own technical director, according to reports in Turkey. He's called Senol Güneş. He's widely quoted as expressing his disappointment at his performances, which were reportedly private conversations which were leaked out. He said, "I cannot understand the Lundstrom transfer. We have several players with the same characteristics. Lundstrom is a very heavy and cumbersome football player. There is nothing we can do at the moment, but if there is an opportunity to send him to another team, it would be good for both Lundstrom and us." So it's led to a few murmurings that Philip Clement, who has name-checked John Lundstrom several times, that you've said already, Chris, this season, that he could be offered back to Rangers. Would you take John Lundstrom back?
No, I think that ship has long since sailed. For football and financial reasons, I don't think that one makes any sense. Again, a point that we touched on last week. I think the profile of Lundstrom in terms of the position and what he was good at, not all the time, unfortunately, for Rangers, but what he was good at when he was on it, I don't think the manager has actually replaced that style. If we could all have the last week of the transfer window back and say, look, can you go and sign another player? I think another midfielder in that mould would certainly be an option for a lot of fans. But no, I don't think we'll see John Lundstrom back in a Rangers jersey. I think that's that his time has come and gone. Both parties made their feelings clear over the last wee while of his contract. He decided to move on. And I think that's that. Not a surprise that it's not going well over there in Turkey. It's a very demanding media, a very demanding fan base, and by the sounds of it, very demanding club officials there as well. So no, it's no. I think it's that type of move. It was always going to be difficult for him. It didn't strike me as the obvious move for Lundstrom to make. But there was obviously, again, football and financial reasons why he thought that was the best one. But interesting to see how that unfolds over the next couple of weeks.
Yep, another player that left in the summer, Ryan Jack. According to reports, he's over in Turkey as well. He's been offered a deal by a team by the name of Erokspor. Never heard of them. Small team over in Turkey. I do know that they play in green and yellow. So, yeah, not the best choice of colours, but I'm sure if he gets offered a contract, he's been out of the game now for a good number of months. So, yeah, good luck to him if he gets a deal over in Turkey. But yeah, a very tough environment to play football. Other news over the weekend, Chris, I wanted to touch on. It's regarding the off-field goings on, and that is Rangers' hunt for a new CEO. Interestingly, the former English FA managing director Adrian Bevington has been speaking about it. He was on the Go Radio football show. It now heads up a German football agency. But yeah, this is what he had to say, folks. Quite interesting comments from him. He says, "It's been interesting watching the performance with everything that has been discussed of Rangers, where there is so much noise and news around the club on so many levels." He was asked whether he could be convinced to take over from James Bisgrove, who says, "Well, I've got a very good job at the moment with a leading German football agency that I've been doing for 2 years. Like Scottish football, I've made no secret over the many years that I would at some point in my career always be interested in working in Scotland. I think it's an incredibly passionate football country, and I've got a great deal of respect for the game there because of the fan base. You've got so much to build on there. Rangers as a football club is such a huge football institution. It's a global club. Obviously, they're not happy with the situation they're in at the moment. The fans are definitely not happy. I have been following it very, very closely. Clearly, they were well beaten at the weekend by a very strong Celtic team. There is a lot of pressure flying around there. What I would say is whoever the chief executive is going to be for Rangers got to be someone who can show real leadership, as a good communicator, got to have a real understanding of the game and the industry and knowledge of the transfer market. He goes on and says other things about the role, but certainly keeping a close eye on it, Chris. This is the sort of guy Rangers should have at the club, should they not?
For me, yes. I think he ticks a lot of boxes in terms of his experience. I'm sure I'd like to think that if Rangers had made that call, as Adrian says there in those comments, keeps a close eye on Scottish football. I'm sure he would have been happy to have that conversation. I'm sure he would have been happy to sit down and discuss things. That's not to say he would definitely have got the job, but I'm sure he would have had those conversations. I thought his comments about what Rangers need in a chief exec were really interesting. Now, he mentioned someone who can show real leadership, as a good communicator, got to have a real understanding of the game and industry, knowledge of the transfer market. Ultimately, I think they've got to have good football industry nous and real common sense and the ability to work relationships. I think that speaks for itself. I think there's a lot of sense in what he says there, and we believe that it will be Jim Gillespie. I think we spoke about high bars earlier on. The bar for the chief exec has to be set really high because it's such a hugely important role for Rangers. That appointment has to be the right one. And I think the things that Adrian outlined in that interview there, that's the type of qualities, the type of characteristics, the type of person that you're looking for in a Rangers chief exec. So I think he would have been a good appointment. That you look at his track record, you look at the clubs that he's worked with, or you mentioned the FA experience there. I actually saw him on Sky last week speaking about Sven-Göran Eriksson as well. I also worked closely with also worked really closely with Sven during his time at England. For me, that's the profile of someone that I thought Rangers would have looked at, would have gone for. Ultimately, it's not to be. But as I think what he says about what Rangers should be looking at, I think there's a lot of sense in there. So hopefully there is some news on the chief exec over the coming weeks, because Rangers really need to now make that appointment and allow the new chief exec to come in and start building those relationships and putting those building blocks in place, because there's plenty of scope, plenty of room for improvement. I think it's safe to say.
Yeah, it's dragging on. They need someone in there pronto. So let's hope we get an announcement on that soon. Before we wrap up, John Allen says, Derek, could you give a shout out to Robert Thompson, season ticket holder who broke his hip at the weekend? He's in the Royal. Well, sorry to hear that, Robert. Hopefully you're on the mend soon, buddy. And yeah, there you go. Hopefully your time in the Royal is a quick one. But yeah, thank you for tuning in as ever. And thank you to Chris and each and every one of you for tuning in to the show as always. We're now on the downward slope towards Rangers returning to action. We're over the hill in the international break. Before we know it, there'll be another one next month, and then there's another one in November. They keep coming around. But yeah, Rangers back in action on Sunday as we go up to Tannadice to take on Dundee United. Let's hope we get a better performance than we witnessed in the last game. But we'll wrap up there for now. Just a heads up, those of you that are extra members, we will be recording a Q&A either today or tomorrow. I'm also going to be speaking to Jeff Holmes, whose book on Alfie Conn is just out as well. Cracking book on Alfie's time in the game. So we'll get Jeff on at some point as well. So keep your eyes peeled for that. If we don't speak to you, enjoy your Monday, and we'll speak to you tomorrow morning. Bye for now.